Rugged Mountain Homestead. My name is Sarah, and today we are in the kitchen making some seasoning blends. I use these blends in place of buying the seasoning packets in the store or the boxes of seasonings in the store. I buy all my spices in bulk quantity, mostly probably 99% from Azure Standard, and I mix them up and I place them in jars so that I have them on hand at all times. We're going to be making 4 seasoning blends today, and the first one, a really popular one with a lot of people, is taco seasoning. So let's go ahead and get started. And I have a bowl here that I'm going to mix everything into, mix it up, and then we'll be placing it in the individual jars. So for taco seasoning, you're going to want to take 3 tablespoons of chili powder. And then you're going to have 2 tablespoons of cumin. I don't have that in bulk because I really usually only use it for stuff like this. I don't use a ton. Just off the cuff. Now these measurements are what is in the recipe, but always do things to your taste. If you're like a really big fan of cumin, or you like it more spicy, you know, you can always add a little extra. But my first go around, I pretty much went by the recipe, and then I just kind of adjusted them and doctored them according to our taste, and this is what is the result. So then I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of ground paprika. And 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. One tablespoon of oregano. And 1 tablespoon of onion flakes. Looks like I might be refilling this very shortly. And a teaspoon of salt. I'm talking about making adjustments. I just thought about this. I actually could have used a teaspoon of my onion salt. That sounds good to me. I will try that next time. So you're just going to stir it all up in here. Okay. What I use for taco seasoning is just a 1/2 pint mason jar, and just seal it up with the regular lid and band that it comes with. If you use a lot of taco seasoning, you know, because you don't have to use it just for tacos. I also use it when making burritos or fajitas, anything like that. But you can also double it, and then you can move it on to just a larger jar. So I'm going to take my pint jar and use a funnel because, excuse me, I said pint, that's a 1/2 pint. We'll use a funnel, and I put down some grubby towels because I'm known for making a bit of a mess at times. So I'm just going to take this now and spoon it into my jar. It's that easy. And I'm making these heaping just, you know, to put them in there. But when you use them, 2 tablespoons equals a store packet. Now, like I said, I put them in there as heaping, and I can already in my head envision that this is at least 4 packets. So you don't have to spend that in the store. Just one less thing. You have it on hand. And with those ingredients, you can just grab them off the shelf when you have a minute and make another jar. It comes out perfectly. Look at that. That's pretty. And it smells so good. So there's our taco seasoning. Roughly 4 packages, or just maybe a smidge more. And put the lid on. And put it on the shelf. That really is easy. And we use it quite a bit. Okay, now that we have that cleaned up, let's go ahead and move on to a really popular one that I used to buy in the store all the time, is onion soup mix. I used to buy the brand name onion soup mix all the time because I used it on pot roast. I used it when roasting potatoes. I threw it in hamburgers. It is just very versatile. I used it even when making things like meatballs, Swedish meatballs. I could go on and on. So this is the recipe you're going to use for onion soup mix. Now, this does make a little bit more than would fit in a 1/2 pint jar. So I have these pint jars out. And we will start off with that. And it's going to be 1 cup of dried onion flakes. And I do have more of these in the pantry. I just need to refill the jar. Most likely, yep, I will need to refill the jar. Okay, 1 cup of onion flakes. Get everything out, stuck to the bottom a little bit. Okay. Six tablespoons of powdered beef broth base. I had a little bit of a time finding this when I first started making this, and I now buy it in a 1 pound bag from Azure Standard. I also, before I found it there, I was getting it at a local Mennonite store. But in the stores, all they usually have are bouillon cubes, and they have a lot of salt in them. You can use those. You would have to like put them in a food processor and crush them up because you do need the powder. But anyway, so it's going to be 6 tablespoons of powdered beef broth base. And that's why I've towels down, because I can get a little messy. 3. And 6. 1 teaspoon of onion powder. I have granulated onion, which same thing, just not as fine. 2 tablespoons of parsley. 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And I'm always 1 liberal teaspoon because we are big garlic fans here on the homestead. One teaspoon of paprika. I've also toyed around with the idea of using smoked paprika. I'm just wondering what kind of flavor that would add to it. And that's a lot of fun of making these too, is that you can kind of mix it up and see what you like and experiment a little bit, and you're not out any money because you have all the spices, the needed ingredients on hand. Okay, so that was our paprika, half a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm not a big salt fan. Dean likes it, but we're huge pepper fans as well. Did I say half teaspoon? Yes, half teaspoon. All right, that's it. 1 cup of dried onion flakes, 6 tablespoons of powdered beef broth base, a teaspoon of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of parsley, a teaspoon of garlic pepper and paprika, and half a teaspoon of salt and pepper. Just mix this all up. And it looks even nicer than what you get in the store. And like I said, you don't have all the additives in it. You know, the MSG, you know, if you use a half a teaspoon of salt or whatever, you don't need that. I mean, I understand that some people really like Dean, like the salty flavor, and it enhances salty flavor, but you know, MSG is a chemical compound, and things like that can cause inflammation. And Dean deals with a chronic illness that affects his gut, and inflammation is horrible. It can affect you in so many ways. And so when we started going and changing our lifestyle and changing our habits and changing, you know, our food to a more natural, no processed, and do as much as we can on our own, his gut health it improved tremendously. I want to say by at least 95%, where he was having a lot of inflammation and things in the past. On his doctor's exam, he had done quite a bit better. So there is a lot of truth to this. Okay, put our funnel up there. Again, I'm using a pint jar because this makes more than what will fit into a half pint. I'm going to gently pour it in here. And I use 3 tablespoons for this. 3 tablespoons equals a store package. And I know that when I was buying this as a store package, it wasn't cheap. It adds up. And now that I make it, it makes almost a full pint jar, and I have it on hand, and I only have to use 3 tablespoons at a time. And again, all the spices right here. You can make so many of your own seasoning blends, and once you start seeing how many of them you make, you really start seeing the savings. Granted, you say, well, it's only $2 here or $3 here. You know, all that adds up. And if you can save $10 here, $10 there, you know, it over the course of, you know, the year, that adds up. And why go out and buy things when you have them already on hand? You're saying, oh, what's the convenience of it? You're exactly right. And a lot of times in the kitchen, I'm all about convenience too. We get busy, life gets busy. So that's why I say, just take a little bit of time, make these seasoning blends. Then this is a convenience item. It's on your shelf, and you don't have to worry about spending more money at the grocery store as things just keep going up and up and up. All right, so we have our onion soup mix, we have our taco seasoning. Now, I noticed a while back, and I tried it once or twice back before I was doing all these types of things, and it was the beefy mushroom onion soup mix. Yeah, something like that anyway, but it's the same brand as makes the onion soup mix. I tried it, liked it just as well. I like mushrooms and things like that, so I have a recipe for that, so let's get started on that one. And I'm gonna have to refill minced onions. Now that I have refilled my minced onions, another good thing about having bulk spices, you can refill it when it gets low and you run out. All right, so now we're back onto the beefy mushroom onion soup mix. Got it. All right, so like the other, we're going to use 1 cup of onion flakes, minced onion flakes. Oops. 6 tablespoons of beef broth base. Looks like I will be ordering some more soon. And 3 tablespoons of dry mushroom soup mix. I bought this in a 1-pound package from As Your Standard as well. And you can see the dehydrated mushrooms in there. Use 3, 1, 2, and 3. One teaspoon of onion powder, granulated onion, whichever you have. And I'm almost out of this. 1 teaspoon of paprika. And a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and pepper. As you may have noticed, it is basically the same recipe as our onion soup mix, except we were just adding 3 tablespoons of dried mushroom soup mix. And this was just something that I experimented with. All right. Mix it up in your bowl. And this will be the same as the onion soup mix, that 3 tablespoons equals 1 store package. And I'm gonna try not to do a heaping tablespoon when I put it in the jar this time. Have more of a rough idea of how many packages. Okay, I counted that to be 6 packages. That would be 6 store packages, and I probably have another tablespoon in there. So, like I said, that's not cheap because I know those packages, they come two envelopes in a package. Well, you have 6 packages in this jar now. Just shake it down and on my lid. And again, I'm just showing you how to make the seasoning blends that I use for basically some of our most popular ones. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them in the future, just give it a thumbs up and let me know, and I'll be happy to make another video creating more. Okay, so the last seasoning blend that we'll be making is a ranch seasoning blend. And you can use this as ranch dip, use it in, I know some of you probably make that ranch crack chicken that calls for a ranch seasoning. And this will replace those ranch seasoning packets that you purchase in the store as well. And we will start out with 2 teaspoons of salt. Wow. That does seem like a lot. 2 teaspoons of salt. 4 tablespoons of parsley. Let's see if I can get 4 tablespoons out without having to refill it right this minute. Oh yeah. Okay. Set that over here so I can refill that. 3 teaspoons of dill. And 2 teaspoons of chives. I have both of those from my own garden, year before last. So the seasonings keep really well. It always excites me when I have seasonings on hand that came fresh from the garden, that I dehydrated, that I processed in the food processor, and I get to use it on a regular basis. Okay, and when I process my own herbs, I just put them in these little glass jars, whatever glass jars you have on hand or that you can find, I just use those. Okay, so it was 3 teaspoons of dill. And it's fresh, like, you know, homegrown. Oh, that smells so good. I can smell that strongly just from standing right here. 3 teaspoons of dill. And again, you know, you have the option if you really like dill and want to be a little bit more liberal with it and say, okay, 3 heaping teaspoons of dill. You have so much more control over your seasonings and what goes in your body. And 2 teaspoons of chives. Now I'm glad that's teaspoons because that's probably all I have left. Maybe. That's what happens when you don't get to plant a garden. But I will be this year. It's not quite 2 teaspoons. And I will be planting more chives. And that's all in an upcoming video, what I'll be planting in the garden. So stay tuned and join me for that. 4 teaspoons of garlic powder. Like I said before, we are garlic lovers in this house, so heaping teaspoon is fine. Four teaspoons of onion powder. Or you could use minced onion if you wanted to, but for ranch, I'm going to use the onion powder. 4 teaspoons of dried onion flakes. Well, guess we will be using the minced onion flakes. It looks really nice. And 2 teaspoons of black pepper. Now this one is not my recipe. This one I got from a cookbook that was put together by another homesteader, Miss Lori from Whippoorwill Holler. We're just gonna put this together. Oh, it smells so good. Now 2 tablespoons equals a store package, a ranch dressing store package mix. So you could use it with mayonnaise and yogurt, sour cream, you know, throw it in your crock pot for whatever recipes you're using ranch for. This, I thought was a half pint, but we'll see. I might be switching to a pint jar for this one. I thought this one was a half pint. We'll see. I'm going to use the same thing that I use when I'm doing canning and get out a little bit of air pockets. So I can fit that last, I think it's a tablespoon. But I lost, it's more than a tablespoon, but I lost count. I know this is at least 3 or 4 packages, store-bought equivalent. Yep, half pint, I was right. All right. All right, thank you, Miss Lori, for that recipe. That's great, that's ranch. So we have made ranch dressing mix, dry dressing mix. We have made taco seasoning. We have made onion soup mix. And we have made the beefy mushroom onion soup mix. And all these are several packages in each. So we spent what, maybe half an hour? And we have all these now on our shelf conveniently. No MSG in them, no maltodextrin, which is highly processed and goes into our food. And these are just from our spices that we have on hand. And that's another big thing. Use what you have on hand. Thank you for joining me in the kitchen today. I've enjoyed putting these spice blends together with you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.